Joe Budden denies that his podcast is falling off and reacts to the complex media list.
No matter what you think of the product, millions and millions are consuming this. Please don't ever center just your thoughts about this and think that you're speaking for the majority. The young just become old. You can't be number one the whole time. What goes up must come down. Has to happen. Please let's separate what the space stars do with what number top two, not one, does.
That's right, y'all. On Twitter Spaces, Joe Budden just addressed this idea that the podcast is falling off. A lot of that has been in the air as some people are noticing on his Reddit and in the Twitter community that his podcast has not been delivering to the levels that people are normally used to. Now, this could be just because it's the summertime, as Joe Budden himself has said that in the summertime, a lot of his co hosts tend to ask for more vacation or don't give their 100%. Now, this is something that I think Joe has admitted. Like, I feel like anybody who says that the podcast has not been to the high levels is usually thought of as a hater. But I do think, I would say over the last month, like right after, well, not even because of Flip, but a little bit before Flip was suspended and after Flip's suspension, the podcast, the quality of it just felt a little bit off with co-host not going all the way and even Joe himself looking a bit lackluster. Now, this last episode that was released, the one with Melissa Ford, and it was awkward back and forth with Joe Budden and Melissa Ford, was one people noted as being really, really bad. Like I saw on Reddit, someone had posted that this was one of the worst episodes they've heard in quite some time. I listened to it. I thought it was a bit up and down. I think one thing that I've noticed is that now I find myself skipping through segments. Like, I used to be able to stomach the long 45-minute intro that they used to do, where it's like a lot of small talk. Joe plays his music. But nowadays, it just feels a little bit hollow and not something I want to listen to. But I still think the pod is somewhat good, somewhat listenable. But Joe has said that when the summer hits, people are just half stepping. And I think as fall comes around, as the weather starts getting colder on the East Coast, Joe Budden's going to kick it up. And Joe also reacted to the complex media list, noting that he is getting up there and now it will be the rise of the young men in the hip hop game. So that's one thing that he acknowledged. I doubt he likes being number two just because if you're a competitive person, who wants to be number two? Number one is where all the fun happens, even if you were number one before. But let me know what you think about this. Do you feel like Joe Budden is accurate in assessing that the pod is still number one and very much successful and also really good because it still has millions of listeners and the people that are being the most vocal are in the minority? So you're talking about places like Reddit and Twitter where loud opinions win, right? If you on Twitter and Reddit, the most crazy out of the box opinion will get you the most traction. It'll get people reacting. Still, these are people who love Joe Budden and the podcast. They typically don't hate on the podcast unless there's a reason to. And for them to say they haven't been listening and haven't been really getting through the podcast, very interesting and something we'll have to examine. Summer's almost going to be over soon, so we'll see how they navigate that. I hope this lights a fire under the podcast to perform a little bit better. I just feel like sometimes they're protecting brands up there that don't need to be protected. I'm talking about people like Melissa Ford and Ish and Flip. Of course, there's other people on the show, but those are the three people that are really big factors to me that need to step it up in order to take the podcast to a more listenable experience. It's still really good, and I just think it's in a down cycle right now, but it will kick up soon. All right, y'all, let me know about what you think Joe Budden said. Let me know what you think about the podcast and the complex media list. Should Joe Budden be number two? Should he have been higher? Well, there's only one spot higher than number 2. Should he have been number 1? Follow me on Instagram, The Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter, The Stop TV. This is Danny from The Stop. Peace.